Welcome to the afternoon session for this wonderful AI and conference, and I think that's what's really important for us to keep appreciating. It's not just AI conference, it's the AI and conference, and I know that Tom and the team have been intentional about that, and it's been an absolute honour to be hosting this morning, and we as Edufuturists are going to just share a few thoughts on what we're seeing, and we'll give you a bit of context really quickly. We've been in this future education conversation for, I want to say, about 10 years. Started off as a podcast about technology. We now are 310 episodes deep. We've interviewed people from across the world about where we think education might go. Obviously, AI has got a big point in that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We also spend a lot of time at events, supporting events, presenting at events, and all the things that go with that, as well as our weekly newsletter. And also, we have an annual awards event. I know a good chunk of you have been here, and Tom mentioned it earlier on. And every year, we want to celebrate those that are doing great things in education. We are, if anybody's listened to the podcast, and if you haven't, just be prepared. We are a little bit punchy. I think that's a nice word. Because we think things need to change radically. But we also know a lot of people are doing really good things in this space right now, despite the circumstances. So we don't just want to be those people that are pointing a finger and saying, this is rubbish. We want to do something proactively and also celebrate people in the same way. So that's why we do the awards. We want to acknowledge people, organisations that are doing great things. And one of those people, Steve?
It's me? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, so we came across Cottesmore quite a while ago, the great work they've been doing. Like I said, they stepped into education and AI and what that looks like in the context of independent school, but also just in the context of the south of England. But it came across, we are nominated, or the votes come in, and the nominations come in from the public, and Cottesmore came across, it was shortlisted, and then this year it ballooned a little bit. So we have a voting process, which is, public vote is one vote. It goes for all of those, and we had 32,400, and Ben's going to tell me the exact number, because that's what Ben does. 36, perfect. I've got Rain Man here, so I'm going to say Tom Cruise, but that comes across really badly, doesn't it? They're trying to big myself up. So yeah, came across Cottesmore and the wonderful things that Tom and the team have been doing for such a long period of time, and then went through the process in terms of post-nomination voting, judging, and all of that, and they came out as winners of the Independent School of the Year, which is celebrated in the north of England, if anybody's been up there. Very different to down here, just to clarify that. We all look like this, and I see the south in you, everybody, which is strong and wonderful to see. So yeah, that's us, and we do a great thing every year, what we think great. Of course, we're going to say it. We have lots of conversations. We put out one once a week, but we have many conversations around Ben's busy life and me as a dad of 2 feral children. And what we then put into the world is our trends booklet. We look at 4-week signals or 4 trends over the previous year of the recording, and we put it in your wonderful pink bags. Everybody show us your pink bags. And then put your hand in and see what you get. And if it's not a trends booklet, put it back in and keep getting it. We run a digital copy, and then obviously we do the hard copy as well through our partners. And what we try and do is just look at those conversations, quotes from our community, and we have a partnership in regards to statistics and data that we can use from FutureSource, which is a big a data company. And we look at all of these different things, and this year the global signals have been strong. We've really, really appreciated it. And actually what we've been seeing is not just this year, actually the commonality and the common trends that are coming out, whether we work across any sector, but also any nation and any place within the world.
So we had the privilege of interviewing the wonderful Richard Kalata, who's a CEO of ISTE. Many of you have heard of ISTE. He came on a podcast recently, and I think it's the introduction in the booklet that you've got. But if we were to summarise what most of you are here for, I think that quote really sums it up. And he says, for those of us, and for the benefit of those listening, if we're going to prepare young people to become learners and leaders in a digital world, I think we agree that's what we want to do. The world is a digital world. If we want to prepare young people to be learners and leaders, we have to do more than teach them how to put their phones in a pouch or not bring them. Now, that might be controversial. We're okay with that. It's towards the end of the afternoon. We might not get invited back. If you just teach your young people to put their phones in a pouch, you are abdicating responsibility as an educator. That doesn't mean we give them free use of it. Don't listen to what I am not saying. Listen to what I am saying. And Richard Carlotta, who's like, he was an advisor to President Obama, so he's worth probably listening to. He said, becoming a healthy digital citizen isn't just about managing devices or device access, but teaching digital habits that spark curiosity, create community, and solve problems. And I think if we can do that and to prepare young people for that, we are moving in the right direction.
This has been covered by everybody. But let me...
It feels like these seats are wasted. I'm going to sit on it.
If I sit down, I'm going to get up like Westlife. I'm just going to call it out. And the singing isn't as good. So yeah, AI and HI. So what we've had conversations about on a regular basis over the last 9 years is knowledge-rich curriculum, a full curriculum that focuses on all the different things, but there isn't enough space to allow educators and those people to really start to think about conversations. And what we called them were soft skills and all this other stuff. And what I've loved since the growth of generative AI is actually more people using human intelligence for a name to actually give those skills that we have conversations and thoughts of. That actually, in the space of artificial intelligence, we need to focus on what makes us human. And I think every single speaker has covered that and gone through it in regards to empathy, compassion, but also what the Americans used to call the 4 C's of communication, creativity, and all of those different bits, and actually focus and create a curriculum and an education system that focus on actually what does make us human, what makes us strong, because this will do all of the rest better than we will. That's just the way it is. But it won't do this as well as what we can. So we have to focus down on the human intelligence bits, and that's really, really important in regards to that positive disruption or considered disruption. And I think what's really, really key is one of the trends that's coming out is not just disruption, provocation, and change just for change's sake. Actually, how can we make it considered? How can we come together collectively? And Collective Genius is a great book from, this is me, I will forget who I'm talking about, but there's a wonderful person out there that wrote a book called Collective Genius, and it'll come back to me. Probably in about 5 minutes, or when Ben's driving home, and I'll wake up and I'll go, yeah, I should have said that. But anyway, listen to the podcast and I'll tell you about it. But yeah, considered disruption is very different from disruption just for disruption's sake. And that's one thing that has really, really come out through the conversations. Ben. But linking it back to AI, why does that disruption need to take place? Why do we need to even consider it and put it into place? Is that actually 83% of companies claim that AI is a top priority in their business plans. We will talk later in regards to the purpose and redefining the purpose of education, but what's key is it's not just to create the next step in terms of those people that are going into work. It's for a future of now, to make holistic educators, holistic learners that have an understanding of all of those things rather than just preparing them for work. But actually, the gap will only become bigger if we don't focus on actually what business and the world needs. What's really interesting as we step through that is, if business is saying one thing that's such a high percentage in terms of their priority, the statistics in regards to the percentages of teachers that have used generative AI based on the data that we have from the National Literacy Trust is 3 in 10 in 2023, 31% had used it. The growth then is 1 in 2, or almost 1 in 2 in terms of 47.7% in 2024. And that's only going to increase. So actually, what does that disruption mean? How do we consider it? And how do we make sure that if business needs it and the world needs it, educators are starting to use it, what then does that look like in regards to considered structured disruption? We've got a wonderful community member in terms of Matthew Weems. And what Matthew said is considered disruption isn't about tearing it all down or waiting for some perfect plan. I think what it is around making intentional choices right now that reflect the responsibility that we carry. And that was part of this morning's conversation. And I think that's really key. We had people on the podcast that talked, Siddhartha Mitra, that talked about actually, is education broken as a system? Or was it just designed such a long period of time ago that the system actually met a purpose then that doesn't meet now, and hence the need for considered disruption?
Thanks, Steve. The second trend that we found from our podcast and all the conversations that we're having across the year was that we need to move into this question mark around assessing beyond grades or numbers, or the next way we're going to shift the deck chairs on the Titanic. Letters, numbers. We're going to go back to letters? I don't know. Who knows? We've got a review that's going to come out. Somebody might know. And then all we're doing is we're just measuring, weighing the pig again in a different way. So the question is, what does assessment beyond grades mean? Now, again, please hear what I am saying, not what I'm not saying. Do I think that exams need to disappear? No. Do I think exams should be the only high stakes measure of the success of an organisation and of a young person? Absolutely not. And so the evidence is suggesting that people are moving towards looking at an assessment system that is beyond grades. Now, we know there are lots of people in the assessment system that aren't just teachers and students. The biggest educational company in the world, their core business is assessment. So we're not going to remove it completely, but we would think there's an opportunity to do assessment beyond grades. And the wonderful Al Kingsley, if you haven't read Al's book, Asking the Awkward Questions, get a good copy of it. If not, I've got a copy I've read a couple of times. You can have it for a tenner. But the conversation now is that we need to rethink assessment methods. So we're not just rewarding that rote learning or exam technique, but recognising the skills and knowledge that are going to serve young people in the world. We often hear people say that we need to make sure that education prepares students for the world of work. Can we just stop with those last two words? We need an education system that will prepare students for the future, not just work, because work is not guaranteed. Work as we know it is certainly not guaranteed. We can't just say that one day you're going to do this and next day you're going to do this, and you're going to go to college and then you're going to go to university, then you're going to get a job. And you're going to keep that job for life. Can I have a quick show of hands of how many people are doing the same job they did when they left university? Anybody? Doing the same job? One person. Thank you, sir, for your consistent loyalty in that space. Most of us have had to pivot, right? Young people that we're teaching now are likely, the average is between 10 and 15 jobs in their lifetime. So what workplace are you preparing them for? And this really boils our blood. By design, our education system is quite happy to fail 40% of our young people. By design. And we're not burning stakes in the street saying this isn't good enough. By design. There must be a better way. And we believe that AI is part of that solution. It's not the only solution, but it requires something. And I know that people are a bit quiet when we say things like this, but we think it's worth provoking that conversation. Steve?
Have we prodded the bear enough yet? You're all quiet. Is it a heavy lunch? Have you got your thinking caps on? Are you all asleep with your eyes open? You laughed, so at least you're awake. So agency with guardrails. I think agency is needed. Top-down approach, as we said, and Anthony showed some wonderful pictures How animated was he on stage? Loved the talk this morning, as I did from everybody. But ultimately, agency and the ability to change will not come from what we see as a decision makers, Parliament, the Education Secretaries for this week or next, and everything else. We need to allow agency across, whether you are a leader in your organisation, or if you're a leader of a cluster of English or maths teachers, or you're just a leader in your classroom. We need to give agency to you, but what we also need to do is make sure there's guardrails. I have 2 feral children, like I keep saying. I took them bowling. Yeah, I know. And it was 4 weeks into the summer holidays. One's 3 and one's 5. I did phone ahead and prepare the bowling alley that this was going to happen, and they had more staff on that day than I've ever seen. But what I didn't do is just give them a bowling ball. What I did is, one of them had one of those little things that you stand up, and little Ollie, I lifted him up and he rolled the ball down the middle and got a strike. And Ella was she tried it, she went, I'm going to get a strike every time, Dad, if I do that. Ollie can do that, what do I have? So I went to the desk and I said, what else have you got? And they gave me bumpers. They were metal bumpers when I was growing up. They were inflatable bumpers now. Ollie thought they were a bounty castle. We just had to explain that to him. But what we did is we varied the guardrails based on age, based on ability, based on knowledge, based on foot. What we had to do is allow agency for them to learn how to bowl, but with parameters to support that mechanism to learn. Agency with guardrails. Is Pete still here? The other half of Pete is Tara. And he always says, what? And we had a wonderful conversation with Tara Jones, episode 284. And it talks about giving student an agency means letting them make the choices, but how they learn, the tools they use, and everything else is around us guiding them through that. Any sons, daughters, or relatives learning to drive? Okay, just imagine giving them agency and no guardrails. We put guardrails in place for opportunities like that. We do exactly the same for learning. We give them the agency, but we allow somebody to be in the passenger seat to support, to guide, to advise, and to also have some secondary pedals if needed. Ben. And I love this quote. This is from the early days. Has anybody heard of a school called Agora? One person. Shame on you, everybody. I'm only joking. So Agora was a wonderful school in Holland, and it had 2 mechanisms. One that went through the normal structure for parents where they could decide, go through qualifications, formal qualifications, everything else. The other side was an opportunity for parents to explore and allow their young people that might thrive in a different environment. Think of Disneyland, but for education. They had slides, they had technology, they had all these different things. And something that Rob said, and he was the instructor and the leader of the school, really resonated with me and has stuck with me since that episode. You can read the full thing, but what I'll say to you is there is no locker in life. But by telling everybody they put their phone in a box, and by saying that they have to put their phone in a locker, how do they learn to manage, to understand, to use technology, but also to limit and remove distraction? Put your hands up of when your phone is near you, the distraction is so prominent that you struggle to leave it alone. Honestly. Okay. So what we're then saying is, to these young children that find it harder to manage distraction, you're not going to give the opportunity to learn, to manage the distraction. Put it in a locker, and when you get home, you and your parents are on your own. What does that do? We need to make sure we give them agency to support them, but put the guardrails in place to allow positive use of technology. 30 years ago, Rose talks about the fact that the mobile phone that she has now has more computing power than the devices she started to use artificial intelligence on. What does that tell you? Education is not heavily funded, is struggling, regardless of the sector that you're in England and the UK. We've got technology, we then remove it as an opportunity. So we just need to consider that. Ben.
And I think that's what's really important here is that, again, please hear what we are saying, not what we're not saying. Screen time, great idea. Limiting the apps, filtering, these things are great. I think we need to be proactive about what our guardrails look like for technology and when we bring it in and when we allow it, rather than a blanket ban. That'd just be a thought. And that's not just us, by the way. We spoke to hundreds of people that are coming to this same conclusion. And then there's a lot of noise about ban the phones. A lot of noise. I've read The Anxious Generation, and I agree with a lot of what Jonathan Haidt says. I do. I've got 2 daughters. You can imagine what that's like as 11-year-old and nearly 15-year-old. My dad, that's a bit weird. Don't then. Be good. Keep it inside. My wife is a police officer. She works in child protection. I do this for a job working in AI and technology. You can imagine my girls have got some guardrails. But we also allow them agency and try and help them learn from the mistakes they've made as they make them, and help them to make different mistakes than what we made. It's simple. Anyway, everybody has talked this morning about that word purpose, whether they've used it explicitly or implicitly. And we believe, based on the evidence and the trends that talked about in these booklets, is that the work that we're trying to do, many of us, is we are trying to redefine the purpose of education. And I say redefine, almost feels like redefine, because we knew what the word, it's interesting that Sir Anthony mentioned the meaning of the word education. I'm a Latin scholar, don't you know? I did A-levels in Latin, classical civilization and history. Yes, I did. So I know what the word educare, what its root meaning means. So when he asked me, what does the word education mean? I'm going up straight away. It means this. Because it's coming about drawing something out. But what we've done in education seems to be about putting something in. So we want to draw something out, but we're focused on putting things in. So the question is redefining the purpose. With the benefit of AI, do we need to put more stuff into their brains when there is a machine that we need to help them navigate that has that knowledge? I'm not saying that they don't need foundational knowledge. I'm not a deconstructionist. I understand what we're talking about in that space theoretically, but the redefinition of purpose is asking the question of, in the age of AI, do we need to fill children's head with knowledge? That's a radical question. I'm not saying the answer is yes or no. I'm just asking the question. Let's ask the question. We're going to redefine purpose. Saugata Mitra, episode 183. We've had Saugata on a couple of times. He's also a former winner of our Outstanding Achievement Award. He said you can't solve new problems with old solutions. We're in the world of new problems. Do you know what? I taught religious studies and philosophy for too long. And when I was thinking about the solutions and the education that I managed to have in conversation, my best lessons as a philosophy teacher were often not with a PowerPoint. It was me sat with a group of students having a conversation about the stuff that we'd been learning. Do you know who else did that? Socrates.
You liken yourself to Socrates?
Yep.
You didn't tell this rap in everybody. Yeah.
Growing it. No, but the ancient philosophers, that's what they've done for millennia. We're actually redefining the conversation, about the conversation, and building good questions and helping young people to navigate rather than just filling full of stuff. You can't solve new problems with old solutions. And Don Clark, many of you, if you want somebody who can push your buttons and provoke some stuff, read anything or listen to anything that Donald Clark says. He said on episode 248, we need to think about individual needs in that space. You can read it yourself, but it says we need to the need for individual needs. And one of our speakers that's going to be coming up is definitely going to be talking about that individual needs and understanding that our young people are individuals, not a one-size-fits-all. We say often on the podcast, and if anybody's listened, you know you're going to be able to finish a sentence, one size fits all means one size fits none. If you don't believe me, read the book by Todd Rose called The End of Average. Average doesn't exist. It can't do. We can't try and use norm referencing when we need, well, we have done for many years, but I think it's time to throw that out. Anyway.
And if anybody thinks average is a thing, get on an aeroplane and enjoy the seat. I look like this generally. I've got long legs. And when I sit in an airport seat that is done on an average, I look like a Mario Kart character. My knees are too high, my arms are everywhere. If I sit in the aisle, I'm nudged constantly, I can't fall asleep. So average, and the whole story in regards to aircraft pilots in the US and average and what that led to and the situation, go research it and explore it. So our next event. We announced this to partners and to our community last week. It came out into the world. Are we on Tuesday? We are on Tuesday. I forget what day it is. Yesterday. We always stick to the north of England. And this year, our Uprising 2026 is in Liverpool. It is... There's no other event in Liverpool that happens. There's a brilliant festival that happens in November. So if you're not aware of Brilliant, have a conversation with Martin. Absolutely wonderful festival for educators up there. We've always committed to stay in the north. Ben didn't tell me we were coming down south past Sheffield last night when he started driving. We do regional events, of course, and we do those kind of things, but we've stuck to in the north. There's a shiny floor. Yes, they do roller discos. And it's a big venue with like-minded wackos and wonderful people that will reinforce, have conversations, have discussions, and understand that it's okay to be different, it's okay to disagree on things, and you can still be friends. Imagine that in 2025 being a thing. And if you want to come along and join us, early bird tickets are available. If we don't hit 50 by the end of today, Tom has to double. It's like, if you don't spend enough behind a bar, so it costs Tom more. So just let them know that. It is pick and mix education. How can we ensure that students have a choice, more choice, and different variations of choice in the world that we live in? It's been a blast. Thanks for listening. We love you all. Appreciate it.